So this is the composition I came up with, and it needs some refining. Like you can see the dark, the tones on the sphere and the tones on the cone are pretty compatible. The darks and the grays are pretty much the same. The cylinder is like very, very bright. So I'm gonna have to work that in, and so what I want to do is darken the darks. Now remember, long ago when we started this, we saved the selection for the cylinder. Well, since I resized and moved the cylinder, that's not going to help us anymore. So let me show you. If I go select, load selection, cylinder body, that's my original drawing, and it's not compatible with the new cylinder, so that's not going to help me. So I got to make a new selection of the cylinder, darken it, and let me show you how to do that. So open the cylinder group. So we have cylinder paint and cylinder white. Select the white layer. Come over to your toolbar and select the magic wand tool, and you'll see how this works. Magic wand tool, I'm on cylinder white, click, and now let me turn off the eyeball of everything else. What it did was it selected that white layer underneath, and so that's the cylinder body. So let me turn on the eyeballs again here. Alright, so I'm going to go to cylinder paint, and I'm going to paint black on this cylinder to make it compatible with these two objects. So black is in the foreground. B for brush tool, let me increase the brush. My brush is at 250, and I'll just start darkening this in until it starts to look, there we go. I want some nice highlights in there, but I want the grays and the blacks to be congruent with my other two objects, and that looks a heck of a lot better. Make sure you're painting on the correct layers whenever you're doing this. Okay, so that's okay. It's not perfect, but it'll do. Alright, now I gotta make shadows, and I would suggest I saved the shadows for last because I knew I was going to change the size and position of the objects. So the way I have this composition set up, I don't think I'm going to be able to see a shadow for the cylinder. So let me close up that group. Let's deal with the cone first. Let's open that up. So you wanted the shadow layer underneath the cone white. So select the cone white layer, make a new layer, call it shadow, and I'm going to put the word cone in there just because, mostly for demo purposes. Click, hold, and drag, and move the shadow layer underneath the white layer. Elliptical Marquee tool, and we can resize this and move it, later. So I'm just going to make an ellipse, and I'm going to fill it with black. Paint bucket tool, make sure you're on the right layer, and fill it with black. Use the move tool, and you can position this. Now you don't want okay, that looks stupid, right? That doesn't make any sense. So you want the shadow. Let me zoom in. I'm going to deselect. Well, I'm not going to deselect this. If I zoom in, see where I put my demarcation of light here? That's where this shadow starts. What I'm going to do is add a blur to this, a Gaussian blur. Marching ants around it. Go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Turn on, make sure preview is enabled, and you can, let me move it here so we can see it, and I'll zoom in. So with preview enabled, I can look at my image over here on my file, and I can see what I got going on and get something that looks cool. That's a little bit too much. I don't want to spend too much time messing around with this. So okay, so that's cool, and I might want to save that selection, but for this I'm not going to. I'm just going to kind of freeform it here. All right, so I have that selection. I can refine this by enabling the brush tool, black paint, and I'm going to make a little tiny brush, and I can really darken in this chunk right here. Right there where I'm painting, I'll zoom in. So I'm really darkening this in. So refining the shadow. Okay. So that's cool. And I could copy the shadow and paste it into the circle layer, but I'm not going to. I'm going to redo it. So I'm going to do Command D to deselect. And I can see a problem compositionally. This shadow ends right at the edge of the canvas, which looks really stupid. I'll deal with that later. I'm going to close up the cone layer, or cone group. Open the sphere. Select sphere white, new layer, call it sphere shadow. Or shoe, let's see, shadow. I'm typing this over a big microphone. The shadow layer is underneath the sphere white layer. Marquee, the elliptical selection tool. Again, I'm going to just move it somewhere under there. I can always move it around, fill it with black. Just make sure you're on the correct layer. Move tool, which is the crosshairs, crossbar up at the top here. Position it correctly. Now in here, the way this is working, this is going to be really probably the darkest part of the whole composition is going to be right there. Same thing, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, previews enabled, and this is going to be pretty black in there, so that looks pretty good actually. Now this chunk right here is going to be super black, so let me get that in there, and that's going to be really black back there. Command D. I see a mistake. This is not wonderful there, so let me do a Command T, and I should be able to stretch this and move it. So I'm using the direction arrows on my keyboard. Let me go to Edit, Transform, Distort. I'm going to pull this shadow this away. I'm going to move it down a little bit. I'm just fiddling around. I'm just refining stuff. That's all I'm doing. Okay, then I can see some mistakes. Now, I'm going to go back to the cone shadow. Enable my move tool. It has to move up a little bit because I didn't, and also it's like a weird shape here. So once again, with the cone shadow layer enabled, Command T. Let me think of this. What do I want to do here? No, I don't want to do that. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to select all three objects. Enable the move tool. And I'm going to move all of these guys over to the left a little bit because this shadow was touching the edge of the canvas and was bugging the heck out of me. You can see I made a mistake and I cut off by mistake there. So I just got to make some little refinements on the shadows here, and I'm debating whether to just end the video here, or do you guys want to watch me screw around with shadows? I'm using the transform tool and the distort there. Now that's looking a lot better. Okay. So you got to play around with this stuff. The circle or the sphere shadow likewise needs to be adjusted and moved, which is what I'm doing. That looks good. This little nugget here at the end of the shadow isn't good. Yeah, I can get the I can use the eraser tool and put it at a very low opacity and low flow, and I can like feather this. There's bunches and bunches of ways. You can edit stuff. So what I did was I got a soft brush for the eraser. I'm using the eraser tool on this, and I could, just use I could blur it again if I wanted to. There's lots of ways to do this. So these shadows they're kind of abstract and too, I don't know, a little bit too geometric, but for this project it's okay. Looking at this, there's some blotchiness in the cone that I might fix. So don't be afraid to go back in there and do some tweaking and some refining. But anyway, let me do a Command S to save. So that's pretty good. This is working okay. So what you want to do now is we saved a Command S, save your PSD file for your own records, but then you're going to go File, Save As, save it as a JPEG, and the JPEG is what you will upload to Blackboard. The end.